Picatrix Book 3, Chapter 6. Translation by David Pereka and Dan Attrell. Read by Dan Attrell. None can be perfected in this science unless they are also inclined by their own nature and by the power and disposition of the planets. This is what Aristotle says in his book of Astral, wherein he says this: "A perfect nature fortifies the philosopher and strengthens both his wisdom and understanding, so that he may accomplish all his works with greater ease." The sages concealed everything belonging to this science as much as possible according to their achievements, and never did they wish to clarify it to anyone but philosophers. They themselves taught all knowledge and philosophical subtleties to their disciples in addition to the works of the spirits of nature. They would call those spirits of perfect nature with these four names: Migius, Betzahuach, Vakdes, and Nufeneguides. These are the names of the four parts of that spirit of perfect nature. When those sages were defective in that perfect nature, they invoked them by those four names, which signify the power of a perfect nature. Hermes, however, said this: "When I myself desired to understand and extract the secret workings of the world and its quality, I positioned myself above a certain pit, a very deep and dark one, out of which blew a furious wind. I was unable to see anything within it on account of the darkness. When I dropped a burning candle into it, at once it was extinguished by the wind. In my dreams appeared a handsome man with an imperious authority, who said, 'Take a burning candle and place it in a glass lantern so that it is not extinguished by the fury of the wind, and thus you will be able to hold the light there. Drop it into the pit, in the middle of which you should dig. There you should pull out an image that, when it is extracted, will extinguish the wind of that pit. Thus you will be able to hold a light there. Then dig in the four corners of the pit, from which you should extract the secrets of the world, a perfect nature, its qualities, and the origins of all things.' I asked him who he was. He then responded to me, 'I am perfect nature, and when you desire to speak with me, call me by my appropriate name, and I shall respond to you.' I asked him what his name was. Then he responded, 'I am named and called by the four names Migius, Betzahuach, Vakdes, and Nufeneguides, by which I shall respond when you call.' I asked him again when I should invoke him, and how I should act while invoking. He then said, 'When the moon is in the first degree of Aries, by night or day, whenever you desire, enter a clean and resplendent house, in the corner of which you should place a table raised from the ground on its eastern side. Take 4 containers. Each of them should have a 1-pound capacity, one of which you should fill with cow's butter, another with nut oil, another with almond oil, and the 4th with sesame oil. Afterward, take 4 other containers made of the same size and fill them with wine. Make a blend from the nut oil, butter, honey, and sugar. Take those 8 containers, this mixture you have made, and 1 glass vase. place the vase in the middle of the table, and atop it the mixture that you have made. Place those 4 containers filled with wine on the 4 corners of the table distributed in this way. The first container in the eastern part, the second in the western, the third in the southern, and the fourth in the northern part. Take the other 4 containers and place the ones filled with almond oil eastward next to the container of wine. Place the one filled with nut oil westward, the one filled with butter southward, and the one filled with the oil of this mixture northward. Take a burning wax candle and place it in the middle of the table. Take 2 censers filled with burning coals, in one of which you should place incense and mastic gum. In the other you should place aloe wood. After doing these things, stand on your feet facing east, and invoke the 4 aforementioned names 7 times. After invoking them 7 times, say this: I call you out, O strong spirits, high and powerful, since the knowledge of the wise and the understanding of those who understand proceed from you, and by your power also are fulfilled the requests of the philosophers, that you may respond to me and be with me, that you may unite me with yourselves, your potencies and powers, that you may strengthen me with your knowledge, so that I may comprehend those things that I do not fathom, that I may recognize those things I overlook, that I might see the things I do not see, that you may remove blindness, disgrace, forgetfulness, and disease from me, that you may make me climb to the level of the ancient sages, those with hearts filled with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and that you may imprint these things upon my heart, that I may become like the hearts of the ancient sages. Afterward, he said, once you've accomplished this task in this way, you shall see me. This ritual is taught in a book called Astimacam. The ancient sages would perform this ritual once a year to benefit their own spirits, such that they might set their perfect natures in order. After this was done, they ate whatever was set on the table, together with their friends. Aristotle said that each and every sage has a personal virtue poured into him by the lofty spirits, by those powers the enclosed senses and mind were opened up, and the sciences made clear. This virtue was bound with the virtue of the planet governing the root of the nativity, such that the virtue co-created in him strengthened him and gave him intelligence. Ancient sages and kings would do this ritual, and with the 4 aforementioned names, they would utter this prayer by which they empowered themselves in their knowledge and reasoning, and in the advancement of their businesses and affairs. With these they protected themselves from the plots of enemies, and did many other wonders. Aristotle claimed that the first man who worked with images, and the one to whom the spirits first appeared, was Carapsebes. He was the first to discover the magical art. The spirits were first manifest to him, performing wondrous things. They unveiled a perfect nature in regard to science, causing him to understand the secrets of nature and knowledge. Thus spoke the familiar spirit: "Hold me with you, but reveal me to no one except to those who invoke me and sacrifice in my name." This sage, who was made wise working through the spirits, benefited himself by their powers and actions in magical rituals. Between this wise Carapsebes and another sage named Amynus, this Amynus was the second one to work on spirits and magical operations, 1,260 years passed. In Amynus's teachings, he warned that any sage who wished to perform a magical ritual and protect himself from the power of the spirits must cut himself off from all inner anxieties and every body of knowledge other than this one. All the senses, the mind, and the thoughts that are turned towards something exclusively are capable of acquiring it more easily. Although contemplation is most regularly suited to this magical science, it is appropriate that the one occupied by it not be involved in any other affairs. Tintins the Greek claimed the same thing in the beginning of his book, that whoever desires to perform this ritual must prune their thoughts and desires toward other matters, since the source and foundation of all this work consists in thought. Aristotle claimed that an image is called an image because the powers of the spirits are joined to it. Thought is enclosed in the thing wherein the spirit's hidden virtue rests. The powers of the spirits are fourfold: sense perception, which exists as a composite in the world; the spirit of an object, by which the spirit is attracted; the spirit of thought, which is perfect, pure, and inviolate; and the spirit of operations wrought by hand. These three spirits existing in matter, in will, and in ritual are united to the perceptions of perfected thought, which we have said is a composite in the world. A magical image attracts rays and brings them together in the things that it intends to bring together, like a mirror that, when raised to the light of the sun, reflects his rays into a nearby shadow. The image receives the rays of the sun by his light and projects them to a shaded place. The shaded place is illuminated and made shining without ever diminishing the sun's light. This is how the three above-mentioned spirits function. When the spirits of motion and rest are joined to the perception of the upper world, the powers of the spirit are attracted and poured into matter. This is the origin of the image and its designation. Socrates claimed that a perfect nature is the sage's very sun and the source of his light. Some questioned the wise Hermes, asking, "What do science and philosophy have in common?" He answered, "Perfect nature." Then they asked him more directly, "What is the key to both science and philosophy?" He answered, "Perfect nature." Then they inquired, "What is a perfect nature?" He answered, "A perfect nature is the spirit of the philosopher or sage in harmony with the planet governing him. It is that which unlocks the knowledge that is otherwise impenetrable, and from which the effects of nature proceed directly, in both sleeping and waking. Thus, a perfect nature, considered as such in the sage or philosopher, is just as the teacher is to his pupil, instructing him principally in fundamentals and easy things, then gradually proceeding to greater and more difficult things until the pupil is perfected in his knowledge. Therefore, a perfect nature is appropriately put into effect by its own power and influence, by disposing the mind of the philosopher according to his natural inclination. Understand that these things are necessary to commit to memory. Hence it should be concluded that it is impossible for anyone to be interested in this science unless they were naturally inclined to it, as much by their own virtue as by the disposition of the planets ruling their nativity.